a teenage Roman emperor prostituting himself in his own palace, a ruler who offered a fortune to any doctor who could transform him into a woman, an imperial host who smothered dinner guests under mountains of rose petals for a cruel laugh. Sounds unbelievable? This is not fiction. It's the shocking true story of Emperor Elagabalus, the most depraved man ever to wear the Roman purple. What kind of madness gripped ancient Rome under his reign? Stay tuned, because the scandalous saga of Elagabalus will leave you astonished and clamoring for answers. Welcome to a dark and dramatic journey through history. Today, we're uncovering the outrageous life of Emperor Elagabalus, a Roman ruler infamous for sexual depravity, religious controversy, and sheer chaos. Elagabalus rose to power at just 14 years old in the 3rd century AD, and in a few short years, he would shock Rome to its core. Why should you care about this long-dead emperor's wild escapades? Because his story is a cautionary tale of how unchecked indulgence and abuse of power can topple even the mightiest. By understanding his rise and self-inflicted fall, we gain insight into the dangers of unbridled hedonism and hubris, lessons as relevant now as ever. So grab a seat and maybe brace yourself as we dive into a tale of power and perversity that will make you appreciate the stability of our modern times. How did such a young, eccentric figure ever become Emperor of Rome? The tale begins in 218 AD. Rome was in turmoil after the assassination of Emperor Caracalla. In the eastern provinces, 14-year-old Elagabalus, then known by his birth name Varius Avitus Bassianus, was proclaimed emperor by his scheming grandmother, Julia Maesa. Maesa spread a bold lie that the boy was Caracalla's secret son, appealing to the legionnaires who had loved Caracalla. In a stunning upset, Elagabalus's forces defeated the reigning emperor, the usurper Macrinus, and the teenager found himself with the world at his feet. Entering Rome as the new Caesar, Elagabalus took the regal name Marcus Aurelius Antoninus to solidify his claim. At first, Romans rejoiced. They thought a new Antoninus meant a return to the glory days. Little did they know, they had just handed the throne to a monster in the making. Elagabalus was no ordinary youth. He was also the hereditary high priest of a Syrian sun god named Elagabal. As he marched toward Rome, this bizarre young ruler donned lavish silk robes and a jeweled tiara, dancing and singing in honor of his foreign god. The signs were there. Rome's nightmare had begun. When Elagabalus arrived in Rome, he immediately turned religious tradition upside down. He built a massive temple on the Palatine Hill for Elagabal, the black stone sun god he worshipped, effectively replacing Jupiter, the chief god of Rome, with his own deity. Imagine the shock in the city. The new emperor paraded his meteorite idol through the streets in a chariot, forcing Rome's senators and nobles to participate in exotic Eastern rites. Each morning at dawn, he led extravagant sacrifices, slaughtering hundreds of cattle and sheep, drenching altars in rivers of blood and wine. He even married his god to a revered Carthaginian goddess to symbolically unite religions, an act pious Romans viewed as sacrilege. As if disrespecting Jupiter weren't enough, Elagabalus broke one of Rome's most sacred laws. He married a Vestal Virgin. Vestals were priestesses vowed to chastity, and touching one was punishable by death. But that didn't stop Elagabalus. He divorced his first wife within months of taking power and shocked everyone by marrying Julia Aquilia Severa, a Vestal, claiming it was a divine match between his god and Rome's eternal flame. The outrage was immediate. Romans believed he had offended the gods and invited doom upon the city. Elagabalus didn't care. He flaunted his contempt for tradition in every way. He began attending Senate meetings with his mother by his side, something no emperor had ever done. In fact, he went further and established a women's senate on Rome's Quirinal Hill, a sort of ladies' council led by his mother and female relatives. This inoculum debated fashion and etiquette, issuing absurd decrees about who could wear silk or ride in a carriage. To Rome's male leadership, this was an insulting mockery of imperial governance. The message was clear. Elagabalus had no intention of playing by the old rules. If his religious reforms and political stunts were scandalous, his personal life was downright deranged. Elagabalus turned the imperial palace into his own depraved playground. By night, the teenage emperor prowled the streets in disguise, frequenting taverns and brothels. According to ancient reports, he would even stand nude at the doors of inns, wearing makeup and a woman's wig, soliciting men like a common prostitute. Yes, the Emperor of Rome literally worked as a sex worker on the side. He set up a room in the palace as a brothel, stripping naked and hiding behind a gold curtain, shaking it seductively and inviting passers-by inside. Of course, those passers-by were often arranged in advance. He was the emperor, after all, but he acted out the role of a lowly harlot to satiate his wild urges. Elagabalus bragged that he earned more money than the other prostitutes in Rome, and even competed with them, delighting in the idea that the ruler of the world could beat streetwalkers at their own game. He would boast about the number of lovers he serviced and revel in being the most desired. It was as if wearing the crown wasn't enough. He craved the perverse thrill of degradation. Many in Rome whispered that the emperor had gone insane. His sexual appetites knew no bounds. Though he married and discarded as many as 5 women, one bride lasted just days before he tired of her. Gender meant nothing to Elagabalus. He openly took male lovers and treated them as spouses. His greatest love was a blonde charioteer named Heracles, a slave from Caria, whom Elagabalus doted on and insisted on calling his husband. The emperor would publicly refer to himself as Heracles' wife or queen, and enjoyed being treated as the submissive partner. Courtiers reported that if Elagabalus was caught cheating with another man, Heracles would beat him in jealous rage. And astonishingly, the emperor loved it. He supposedly flaunted the bruises from his lover's punches like trophies. The ruler of Rome delighted in playing the role of an adulterous, battered wife, and Heracles was just one of many. Another lover, an athlete named Zodicus, was renowned for his extraordinarily large endowment. Upon hearing rumors of Zodicus's attributes, Elagabalus simply had the man shipped to Rome for an imperial inspection. In a lavish ceremony, Zodicus was welcomed into the palace, showered with flowers and wine. When he greeted the emperor, "Hail, my lord," Elagabalus cooed, "Call me not lord, for I am a lady." He then joined Zodicus in the bath to verify the man's gifts, reportedly burning with desire. Yet this twisted love triangle ended in farce. A jealous Heracles conspired to drug Zodicus so he couldn't perform in the bedroom. The next morning, a disappointed Elagabalus sent Zodicus away in disgrace. Even the emperor's debauchery had its dramatic twists. Through all these exploits, Elagabalus indulged in gender-bending extravagance. He wore lavish makeup, depilated his entire body to be smooth, and dressed in opulent gowns. He demanded to be addressed as empress, not emperor. In fact, he so desperately wanted to embody the female role that he made a shocking proposition. Elagabalus offered a physician a vast sum of gold to physically transform him, to give him a woman's genitalia through surgery. In other words, this 3rd century teenager sought the ancient world's version of gender reassignment. Roman society had never seen anything like this. To the conservative Romans, Elagabalus's behavior was beyond outrageous. It was an abomination. Elagabalus's daily life became a freakish circus of excess and cruelty. The young emperor took pleasure in dreaming up new ways to startle and horrify his subjects and guests. His dinner parties were the talk of Rome, for all the wrong reasons. He served lavish courses on gold plates, but also enjoyed practical jokes that could turn deadly. In one infamous instance, Elagabalus invited many wealthy friends to an imperial banquet in a specially designed room. As the guests feasted, drunk on wine, the ceiling above slowly opened, and from it cascaded an avalanche of rose petals and violets. Petals rained down by the thousands, a fragrant pink storm. At first it was enchanting, until the flowers fell in such masses that people could not breathe or see. Guests began to scream and scramble, but the doors had been quietly barred. The unfortunate diners were buried alive in perfumed petals. Some suffocated to death right under the gaze of the giggling 18-year-old emperor. Whether this grotesque event truly happened or was an exaggeration by later writers, it illustrates how far Elagabalus would go for a sadistic laugh. On another occasion, he set loose tame lions and leopards during a banquet. Imagine eating dinner when suddenly ferocious beasts roamed the hall. Guests shrieked and dove under tables in terror. But these animals had been defanged and drugged. They were harmless. The emperor simply enjoyed watching his dignified invitees panic in fear for their lives. No one was ever safe from his twisted sense of humor. Elagabalus also loved to humiliate the powerful and the rich. He would seat high-ranking officials at wildly mismatched places, serving sumptuous delicacies to the lowest-born guests and giving stale bread to senators. He was known to drunkenly dance on tables, dressed in gaudy costumes, as respectable Roman nobles looked on in horror. At one festival, he had prostitutes and entertainers dine at the head table, while magistrates sat at the far end with slaves, turning the social order upside down for a night. The emperor's message was one of utter contempt. Nothing was sacred in the court of Elagabalus, except his whims. With every outrage, Elagabalus was digging his own grave. By 221 AD, Rome had had enough. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's own protective force, was fed up with his disrespect for Rome's values and perhaps tired of his broken promises and bizarre antics. The emperor's grandmother, Julia Maesa, also realized her experiment had gone horribly wrong. Fearing that Elagabalus would destroy the dynasty, she secretly shifted her support to her other grandson, the emperor's young cousin Alexianus, known to history as Alexander Severus. She convinced Elagabalus to name the mild-mannered 13-year-old Alexianus as his heir, hoping a more stable figure could calm the chaos. But Elagabalus's paranoia and cruelty only grew. Soon he regretted elevating his cousin and plotted to have Alexander killed. This proved to be the final straw. In March 222 AD, the Praetorian Guard openly rebelled. When Elagabalus attempted to publicly remove Alexander's titles, the Praetorians rose up and demanded to see the young cousin to ensure he was safe. Panicking, Elagabalus ordered Alexander's execution, but no one obeyed. Instead, the soldiers in the camp started chanting Alexander's name. The jig was up. Realizing the tide had turned, Elagabalus and his mother barricaded themselves in the palace. The Praetorian soldiers, enraged and now acting on Julia Maesa's secret orders, stormed the complex. The 18-year-old emperor, who had drenched Rome in debauchery, tried to escape. He even hid in a large chest or wardrobe, hoping to sneak away. But there was nowhere to run. Captured by his own guards, Elagabalus was dragged out, begging for mercy. There would be none. In a brutal scene, the Praetorians fell upon the emperor and his mother Julia Soaemias, slaughtering them on the spot. Elagabalus, the boy who styled himself a queen, was beheaded. His mother was also killed at her son's side, in a grotesque parody of the family's earlier power. The soldiers weren't done. They hauled the emperor's mutilated corpse through the streets of Rome, the same streets where he once led parades of his sun god, and brought him to the river. Ancient accounts say his headless body was thrown off the Milvian bridge into the Tiber. To ensure this human blight never rose again, rocks were tied to him so he would sink. Thus ended the reign of Elagabalus, in blood, mud, and the waters of the Tiber. The Senate wasted no time declaring an official Damnatio Memoriae, the eradication of Elagabalus's memory. His name was chiseled off inscriptions, his statues smashed. It was as if Rome itself wanted to wipe clean the stain of his rule. In just 4 years, Emperor Elagabalus had pushed Rome to the brink with his madness and depravity. His rise as a teen tyrant and his spectacular fall serve as one of history's most dramatic cautionary tales. Key takeaways? Absolute power in the hands of an indulgent teenager led to absolute chaos. Elagabalus's story shows the perils of unrestrained hedonism and the importance of respecting cultural values, even for a king. He became a byword for decadence. For centuries after, the mere mention of Elagabalus conjured images of moral corruption, scandal, and horror. Yet through the lens of time, his reign also fascinates and teaches. It forces us to ask, how far can someone go before their society snaps? What happens when a leader has no limits? Elagabalus is a reminder that even in a world as permissive as ancient Rome, there are lines you cannot cross without dire consequences. In the end, his own excesses destroyed him. If this mind-blowing saga left you amazed and a bit grateful not to live under such a ruler, then hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. History is full of unbelievable stories like this, and we have many more to tell. Subscribe to the channel for more riveting tales from the shadows of the past. And don't wander off just yet. Check out our next video for another incredible chapter in history that you won't want to miss. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious.